All right. Let me get rid of that. Hello out there. Hello, everybody. Welcome to yet another Solace Office Hours. I am your host, Aaron. Aaron from Solace. It is what is it? It's October 29th, 2024. Hello and happy almost Halloween. I am joining you live from Singapore. It is 10 p.m. at night here. And we're going to be doing this a very technical, well, fairly technical office hours today. It's going to be all about Solace APIs. And to help me with that, I'm very pleased to be joined by my very good colleague, Ragnar. I'm going to bring you in here. Hello. Hey, Ragnar.
Hey, hello. Thanks for having me on, Aaron. It's going to be fun.
Well, thanks for deciding to do this with me. So why don't you introduce yourself to the people out there who may not know you?
Well, I'm Ragnar. I'm the manager of the Solace SMF APIs, the development and maintenance of those APIs across all the languages that we support. So I've been doing this at Solace now for 16 years.
Wow. Yeah.
It's been a fun learning curve. It's fun to stay on top of all the new things that are coming along.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen quite a few changes over the years with regards to support for our product, different APIs coming down the pipe, obviously, as we've added new protocols and kind of working with all the different, lots of customers and use cases, trying out our APIs in new and exciting ways we probably never dreamed of.
Well, you can never dream of how customers will use the stuff. You think you've thought of everything, and then the support call comes in, and you slap up yourself upside the head and say, "Oh, why didn't I think of that?" That's the job. That's being nimble. That's being responsive.
So you're joining us from Ottawa, right? You're just are you in Ottawa? Or are you outside Ottawa, or?
I am right in Ottawa, or in a suburb of Ottawa called Barhaven.
Okay, so 10
30 minutes from the office, and I usually go in 2 or 3 days a week. I'm taking this call from home because it's a little bit better setup for video.
Yep, I see Mark is backstage adding banners for us. So so I'm in Singapore. Ragnar's back home in Ottawa. If you're out there, say hello. Put yourself in the chat. Say where you're joining us from. There's Mark saying hello, good evening, good morning. Good morning, everybody. So good morning, good afternoon. We are live on LinkedIn. We are live on YouTube and on the Solace community. If you head over to solace.community, you'll find this recording there playing right now and available for the next several weeks. And of course, you can always watch the replay on YouTube or on LinkedIn going into perpetuity. So say hello. Say if you have any questions. I mean, that's why we're here. We're doing an office hours all about the Solace APIs. Ragnar is here to lend some sense of credibility to this show, because I know a few things, but I mean, this guy, he'll answer all of your tricky questions. Hey, Michael from Germany, thank you for joining. We got a European on here. Excellent. That's good to see you. Good to have you there. Okay, Ragnar. Before we get started, I'm actually going to do a couple announcements. So I'm just going to shift you over here, and I'm going to. So first up, I guess I'll mention. Let me just add my screen. There we go. In I guess just over a week. I don't know. What is the 5th? Is the 5th a week from today? It is. So the 5th, next Tuesday, is our Solace product update webinar. You might have seen the ad or the kind of the trailer by Sean McAllister on LinkedIn. Make sure you register for this. This is going to be good. It's going to be all about micro integrations, our new connectors framework, event mesh for AI, obviously kind of some of the new features and where the product is going to be going over the next maybe year or so. I don't know what they're going to be presenting. So I'm going to be tuning into this. I hope you do as well. So head over to, just Google Solace product update 2024. If you can read the URL up there. There it is. Or you know what I can do? I can just stick this in the chat. Watch this. Put it in the chat. So that is next week. And then I guess the other big announcement, obviously, is our EDA Summit that is going to be in early December. So December 11th, EDA Summit. It's free to register. Sign up here. Head over to edasummit.com and make sure to subscribe and register for that. So all about EDA, different customer use cases, different analysts. A lot of people talking about how they're using EDA in their industries and their verticals, and be sure to check that out. So that's my announcements. Got a couple more people saying hello here. Hello, another German. Hello. Someone from Solace? Oh, that's me. Ragnar, hello from Poland. Greetings to Theo from the Solace team. Hello, thank you for joining. Thanks, Mark, for posting that. And from Combator, where is that? Combator? I don't know. I guess I have to work on my geography skills here. You know Ragnar? Any clue?
Combator? No, that's a new one by me, and I'd have to go Google that.
All right, Vinod Kumar, come and tell us where you're joining from. Be a bit more generic or less specific.
Pick a continent, any continent.
That's right. Okay, so Ragnar, you can see my screen, the slides. Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks a little delayed. I hope it's okay. I got my fancy little. Is this working here? My little mouse pointer. Yep, that's working. Okay. So if you're out there, you have a question, put it in the chat. We'll try to keep an eye on it. Ragnar, keep an eye on it. And Mark is backstage, so he can probably help out with that because I'm doing the presentation here. So, and feel free to jump in at any point there. So, we got a few more just before we get started here. Hey, Tamimi from Vancouver. Good early morning to you. It's 7 a.m. or so. And hey, Sissy from Ceylon Roll. Excellent. All right, let's get into this. So all about Solace APIs, right? Let's do this. Now, so topic of conversation, all about Solace APIs, but it's not going to be all about all Solace APIs. India, Kolkata. Okay, very good. Yeah, caught that. Yep.
And that's where Combator is as well.
Got it. I will check that out on Google Maps when we're done here. So, yeah, have a question, ask it. So yeah, it's not all about all Solace APIs because Solace has a bunch of APIs, right? We have our SEMP management API, both the V1 XML RPC one and V2, which is a fully RESTful one for configuring your brokers, configuring your VPNs, making queues, making usernames, ACL profiles. More details there at that URL. It's not about that. It's not about the event portal API or mission control APIs or any of the APIs as part of event portal, which you can find out more at that URL there, api.solace.dev. So it's going to be talking about messaging APIs, right? The publish, subscribe, communication patterns of applications going over Solace. Specifically the Solace messaging API. So I guess it's not going to be everything about Solace messaging API. So if I had to make the title a little bit more clear, rather than all about Solace APIs, I guess it's going to say some stuff about some of the Solace APIs. I think that's probably, we don't have time to go through everything about every Solace API, right, Ragnar? This is a 1 hour presentation here, so.
I know, and we don't even have all the right experts in the room about all the Solace APIs. So.
That's right. Yes, we could. This would be a week-long seminar, I think, if we wanted to do everything about every Solace API. So some stuff about some of the Solace APIs. What at the very top of the agenda? What does a messaging API look like for those who are tuning in who've never done publish subscribe, never done a messaging application or an eventing application? We're going to very quickly take a look at what a generic messaging API might look like. What APIs does Solace have? What APIs do we support? Some new features that have come out in the last couple of years, maybe, and some honorable mentions. And to close it off, if we have time, depending on if we have questions or not, some best practices, better practices. I never want to say best practices because a lot of these are my opinion and not necessarily, but I think Ragnar, you'll agree with me on most of them. So good practices, decent practices. All right. All right, so I'm gonna move our heads here for a second, or I'm gonna actually do it. Yeah, let's do it this way. So if you've never seen a Solace API or a JMS API or an MQTT API or a messaging API, this is probably a generic, very basic view of what it would look like. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of other functions and feature functionality. But I would say at the very basics, this is what you're going to get. So you'll have somewhere to connect into. You're going to have a broker, like the Solace broker, or whatever messaging you're using, username and password. Obviously, disconnect. It's a stateful connection. You're going to connect and stay connected. If you're using topics, you will subscribe to a topic and obviously unsubscribe from a topic. In Solace world, we do a lot of our guaranteed messaging using queues as our kind of persistent storage in the broker. So you, as a consumer, you'll bind to a queue to receive those guaranteed messages from it and symmetrically unbind from the queue. As a publisher, when you create a message, a text message or a binary message, and you're going to publish it. So I'm going to publish a message to a destination, and that destination in Solace world, very similar to JMS, is, to a topic or to a queue. And we try to promote publishing on topics, right, Ragnar? That is the new modern way of doing things.
Yeah. And the reason we use two terms there, right, is because a topic in the Solace world can include a wildcard.
That's right. That's right. Not on the publisher side, but
on the publisher side, but on a topic can include a wildcard, so you can match many destinations. So that's how we differentiate between the words topic and destination in the Solace world.
That's right. That's right. So, and if you want to see, I definitely have a couple of videos out there all about Solace topics, hierarchical, multi-level topics, wildcards, and how they're very useful in kind of describing a more complex filtering and routing kind of use cases. As a consumer, most of the APIs offer some of the APIs, I'm not sure, offer a blocking. It really depends, I guess, Ragnar, right? So some of them are definitely much more real time and only offer the asynchronous kind of callback interface on which to receive a message. This is like an interface that you might specify. Say, hey, whenever there's a message to hand me, here's the method to run, here's the function to run. But some of our APIs that have more complex threading have the ability to do a blocking receive call, such as our JCSMP API, which I'm very familiar with. You're more familiar with the C API, Ragnar, I'm guessing. I'm going to lean on you as my C expert because I don't know the C API that well.
The blocking receive is quite common pattern, and it's really only the C API that doesn't offer it.
Okay.
Even some of the APIs built on the C API, like Python and Go, we've built in the threading so you can do a blocking receive there as well. So
right. Okay.
So it's more common to have the blocking receive available. Which of course can have a timeout on it, so it's not blocking forever. You can put a timeout at 0 and not block at all. You could just pull with receive, but
yeah. And obviously, if you're using the C API and you want to implement, a blocking receive, just like you can obviously do with a bit of threading and basically have create a thread, have it listen, and then pass that message or dispatch it using some kind of mutex or some other kind of threading model, something, right? So, and obviously for good measure, doing request reply. A lot of people still use Solace and messaging APIs to do blocking request reply. And you can see here that I make a request to a destination and I will return a message object. So that's my response message there coming back from the other side. So at a very high level, that is what a Solace API looks like. I'm going to try to keep an eye on the chats. Yeah. All right. Looking good. Okay. So how many Solace APIs does Solace support? I've seen different pictures of this graph in our slide from our sales deck. I took this out of the sales deck. It's kind of broken out by protocol or framework. You can kind of see here. So rather than just, languages, we talk about the Solace specific. This is our native. These are native APIs. MQTT is a protocol. AMQP 1.0 is another protocol. We offer a number of APIs that do WebSocket support. We have a RESTful kind of an HTTP interface, and obviously all the plugins and iPaaS integration platform as a service, Boomi, MuleSoft, and all the kind of integrations into the cloud. So a bunch of different ways of connecting, lots of different APIs. But again, we're only talking about Solace ones today, right, Ragnar? So I mean, there's
just the small upper left-hand corner. But
that's right. Just these ones up here. We're gonna kind of zoom in on here, but just know that if you're using other protocols or other frameworks, there are like lots of other different languages and options to you. So kind of breaking that graph down into a bit more specific text. Let's talk about protocols. So yeah, so Solace obviously from day one has offered our own native SMF. I call it native. I don't know if that's the correct terminology, but yeah, native SMF format. So Solace message format. This is the native wireline that all of our Solace APIs speak. And you can connect to the broker over TCP, kind of just a raw TCP socket, or most of our APIs now, almost all support WebSockets. All of them? All right.
Yep, all of them I think will now support WebSockets.
All right, and there we got some slides on that in just in a couple slides. So all right, so TCP or WebSockets. We offer protocol support for MQTT 3.1 and 5. So this is a very popular protocol for IoT, but since version 5, they've offered kind of request reply paradigms, user properties, inside the messages, a lot more capabilities that make it almost a bit more enterprisey. It doesn't offer transactions or things like that, but MQTT5 is a pretty well-rounded protocol, I think, and available over TCP and WebSockets and Solace. AMQP 1.0, we have a RESTful interface, which you can access in 2 different modes. So people that know Solace, inside your message VPN, you can configure your VPN to be either in messaging mode, where the broker acts as the other side of your REST communication. So you post into the broker, or the broker will post to you, or gateway mode, which we kind of don't talk about so much, but I really love it as a feature, where the broker acts as a proxy, and you can post through the broker to a backend service. And while the message is going through the broker, it's a Solace message, and you can, do publish subscribe with it. You can do different kind of routings and cool stuff with it. You can snoop the message. You can do a wiretap, I guess, kind of pattern. And to round it off, I guess, like the software broker supports Kafka as a protocol via the integrated Kafka bridge, or IKB. So if you're looking to connect a Solace broker to a Kafka broker, we have that capability in the software broker today. And you can set that up, and it does topic translations and protocol stuff. It's pretty cool. I do want to mention that there's this new web page out there that goes into quite a bit of detail about all the different headers and parts of the message and parts of the payload and metadata, and how it gets converted from one protocol to the other. So this was kind of by customer demand, and one of our architects went off, spent a whole bunch of time over the summer gathering up all the different bits and pieces from all the different, I don't know, probably from within the code, I guess, like from our docs, from our Jiras, from all over the place, right, Ragnar, to kind of assemble this kind of anything to anything guide of how messages are converted.
Try to gather all the knowledge into one place, one table.
That's right.
All knowledge that can't ever be captured in one table. I'm sure there's something missing, but we fill it in as we can.
That's right, and it's available publicly, which is pretty nice, rather than kind of just for an internal thing. So that's all the different protocols. Again, we're going to be focusing on the Solace, the SMF, the Solace APIs. And so this is, once we've zoomed in on that green box, the Solace API box, these are the Solace APIs that we currently have. And so at the very top, we have C, we have a C#.NET API, we have 4 Java APIs. People might be like, often I get asked, which Java API should we be using? Well, I got a couple. I'm going to expand this in just a second. We have a JavaScript, Node.js, TypeScript API, and our newest APIs down at the bottom there, Python and Go, for those that are into Python and Go. And for Java APIs, so which one do I choose? So I will say that JCSMP is one of our oldest APIs, has been around for a long time. I say it's battle tested. I say it's hardened, and it's been thoroughly proven in the realm of production testing. So I would say it's our classic API. It's fully featured, but has a lot of legacy terminology, right, Ragnar? It has this XML message and XML consumer and a bunch of XML this and that. People make it.
It's got a lot of legacy technology. It's got a lot of objects that are named things that don't really make sense anymore. Because when you put something out in Java, it's got to stay there forever. Otherwise you're breaking semantic versioning conventions. And we only just dropped support for Java 6 this year, and we had complaints at that. It's surprising, but but you have the classic customer that wants the newest thing tomorrow, and you got the classic customer that said, "Hey, it works. Don't mess with it."
They're running like 8-year-old versions, and they just don't want to touch it because it still works. And so JCSMP is our older API. It's kind of, as Ragnar said, it kind of grew organically. So a lot of the naming conventions and stuff. The PubSub Plus Java API is our new API. You might hear it called New Java or Next Gen Java. It's our new Java API, a very modern approach to design, and that design fell into the Python and Go APIs as well. So much more modern approach, heavy use of the builder pattern, just a lot easier to use, a lot simpler to use as a developer getting started than JCSMP, which is definitely a bit of a learning curve. So if you're first picking up Solace and you have a new nice greenfield kind of project, I would say the Java API, PubSub Plus Java is probably where you want to start, right?
Yep. it was designed for exactly that reason, just to be simple, offer a small common subset of features that people, hit 90% of what we want. Now it's taken off and people want it to do everything. So we're slowly adding in all those other features.
Like originally it was meant to be like just a really pared down API, right? Like only like a bare minimum of functionality. And then it's like, oh, can it do this? Can you add this? Can you add this? Can you add this? And we're pretty close to feature parity, I think, at this point. So I guess that's the problem with success is they want it to be to do all the things, right? So we have a JMS API. Obviously, if you're looking to use a standard programming API, JMS is the way to go. It allows you to move between different JMS brokers, like going from Tibco to Solace or Solace to MQ. If you use a JMS programming spec, you can just swap out the jars and connect to different brokers. Obviously, if you're using any third-party applications like
WebSphere, application servers, there's lots.
Tibco Business Works, it just swap out the jars and there you go. So most people that hand code to JMS probably not as common. And obviously, if you're using JMS, it's not going to have access to the full features of the Solace APIs, right? Because it's a JMS spec. It doesn't have access to all the cool bells and whistles that our APIs do. Okay. And then last one at the bottom there, Java RTO is real-time optimized. This is actually a JNI wrapped C API. And I'm just including it here to say, be careful. Like, don't choose this as you're getting started. Let's just say that. Like, this is only for kind of really ultra low latency trading platform use cases where you want to build something that's going to be very low latency. It's difficult to write code that's very low latency in Java because that garbage collection, when it kicks off, it can really mess up with your threads or your CPU and cause latency, right? That's why people like to use C. Everything's pre-allocated.
And to use the Java RTO API effectively, you have to write your Java application in that way as well. Just don't allow objects to go out of scope. Maintain your own memory pools, maintain your own object pools, write like a C programmer, except in Java.
Yeah, it's very it's not typical. Like, the nice thing about Java is that, you can just create new things. Things will get destroyed when they go out of scope. It just, it's all that stuff is handled for you, unlike malloc and I forget my C. Anyway, it's you have to write, pre-allocate all your arrays, reuse everything. Don't, because we want that. Anyway, Java RTO, don't start with that. Let's just say that. How about that? So,
it's actually, and it's for predictable latency, right?
Yeah.
More than
latency, but predictable latency. Yeah, stable latency. We want that low jitter. We don't want, because you might get $1 million trade right when your garbage collection kicks off, and now you're 3 milliseconds late and you've lost the deal or something. I don't know. I don't know the terminology in trading applications. We got a question here from Sissy. Hi, Aaron. Are there best practices for developers to reconnect applications if broker getting back after being disconnected after an upgrade? Yes, I do have some slides towards the end on, it will be one of my, I think, first best practice slide is all about reconnection settings. So yes, stay tuned for that. Thanks, Mark, for throwing that up there. I'm kind of busy here. There's a few other questions. Yeah, just put it up, Mark, if it's a question that Ragnar and I can talk about. For SAP S4, is a Sapio the connector, or are there any other? I don't know SAP stuff that well. Yeah, there we go. I'm sure there's some people online that can answer that. Thanks, Nick. Yep. Cool. Yep. Ragnar, do you know SAP stuff? I don't.
I'm afraid it's a little bit out of my bailiwick.
That's right. So don't ask me questions about MuleSoft or Boomi or SAP. I have yet to learn these things. I'm still just a Solace API guy. So with regards to feature parity, something that I mentioned earlier with the Java API, we do have this cool matrix. You can just Google Solace features support API, and you'll find this page where it lists all of our major features and go through kind of like, make sure that which APIs have which things. So check that out if you really want to know if your particular API that you want to choose doesn't have it. And if it doesn't, come and find us on Solace community to ask why we haven't implemented it yet. So
and check back often. We're always looking to change those X's to check marks. It's a process.
That's right. Yep. Some recent ones. I don't know. Let's see. Oh, right at the top here, request reply. That was recently added into the Go API, like within the last year or so, right? I mean, it was publish, subscribe, streaming only, and people were like, we want to be able to do request reply in Go. So we're like, okay, well, that was not part of the original spec, but we will add that in. So yes, we're constantly upgrading this thing here. So check it out. So let's talk quickly about some newish features. These are not all the most brand new, but these are kind of important ones, I think, that have come out over the last year or two. Consumer NAC support, automatic payload compression, WebSocket support for Java, and delayed redelivery. So I made a whole video about this about a year ago when I was actually in New Zealand. But yeah, it's all about consumer NACs. I have another video about 5 years ago saying Solace doesn't support consumer NACs. So I had to make an update and say, well, I guess we do support it now, right? So this is for our guaranteed messaging. As a consumer, you're receiving messages off your queue, off your guaranteed endpoint, and you want to put that message back onto the queue. Like the consumer, is unable to process this message, maybe due to, I don't know, you're running out of resources, or you can't save it into the database that you're connected to, or whatever reason, right? You might want to tell the broker, hey, I can't deal with this message right now. Put it back onto the queue and try again a little bit later. So this is how you can do it. So this concept of settle. Now, Ragnar, is settle is the terminology used across all the APIs, right? So they're all okay.
Yep.
And the enum the outcome here is the same, I think, as well. So there's three different outcomes. Accepted is your standard ACK, right? Like I'm happy with this. I'm done with this message. Take it off the queue. The outcome of failed, which is essentially the NAC. Put it back onto the queue. Make it available for redelivery. And this would increment the redelivery count if the queue is configured for that. So if you're kind of tracking how many redelivery attempts this message has made, that would be 1. And rejected, which is essentially like, this message is so messed up that no matter how many times you redeliver it, it's not going to get any better, right? So maybe the payload's completely corrupted or something. I don't know how it happened, but discard means just get rid of it, right? Delete it, or if you have a DMQ configured, then move it to the DMQ. So yeah, check it out. Play around with it. You might notice some different behaviors based on your window size, on the number of max unacks per flow configuration on the queue. There's a number of things to keep in mind. Order can change. If you have a very large window, the ordering of the messages can change because other messages are streaming in behind the one that you NAC. So definitely some things to try out before you put this into production. So give it a try. That's what I can say. Payload compression. So this has been added across all of our APIs, and I think is it available in all of our APIs at the moment, or is it still a few outstanding there?
As we speak, the last APIs to enable payload compression went out last week.
Okay, cool. So hopefully, if you're watching this, everything is completely done. And so Solace has, at least since I joined 13 years ago, the ability to connect to a compressed port, where basically the TCP connection between me and the broker, between the API and the broker, is a compressed stream of binary data. So using, I think it's zip compression format along this stream of messages, it allows compression on that. But it's still an uncompressed message when it gets to the broker, right? There's compression uncompresses at either end of that link. This feature basically automatically compresses the payload at the publisher before it goes into the broker. So obviously you could have written your own code to do this very easily, and just send published compressed payloads. But this now makes it all automatic, which means if you're using JMS or some other kind of low code environment, this makes it a lot easier. And the big thing is that it would save spool, your message spool size, disk space on the broker, right? You're publishing.
Yeah, it saves it means that you can put more messages in your message spool, if they're largely compressed. And it means that the broker doesn't have to do as much work on a per link basis to decompress the data. It doesn't decompress it at all.
That's right.
So that's where the bandwidth comes in. It's like,
Yeah. If you're doing streaming compression, it has to uncompress when it gets there and then to look at the message, right? But if you're doing this one, the payload compression, it just treats it as, it doesn't have to do any work. So okay, it does say it's a broker
considerable effort when you spread it across, hundreds or thousands or
I should have added that. Yeah, because broker CPU or processing, I guess you could say, it's like not just spool and disk space. So the people I think that'll really like this are the people that are still sending like very verbose XML messages that are like 50 kilobytes big, and they'll probably get compressed down to 1 kilobyte or something, right? So anyway, check the docs. Make sure you are looking at the end-to-end compression payload compression feature, and that is different than the streaming compression feature that I mentioned just earlier. So I guess Solace has these two different ways of doing it. Check the docs or check your code to make sure you're doing the one that you want, right? WebSocket support. So when Solace created the JavaScript API, obviously browsers need to support WebSockets. So we originally our WebSocket support was only for the JavaScript API, and then the C API.
Originally, the JavaScript API only used WebSockets too. We did not have a raw TCP connection from JavaScript originally. It wasn't in the browsers.
Right.
We had to add that. So goes both ways.
we had to add TCP for the Node version, I guess, right? Because you still can't. Yeah. Okay. All right. And then we added WebSocket support into the C API a long time ago, and that kind of confused me. I didn't know why we did that. Because I in my head, like WebSocket is literally only for the browsers. That's the only reason we'd want it. But there is good reason to have it in our actual, kind of enterprise grade APIs as well. So I threw in some slides there or some text at the bottom. Ragnar, so it's a way to kind of get around the internet a bit easier, isn't it? Using WebSockets.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, everything, everyone connects or allows connections to the HTTP ports, port 80 and 443 for secure HTTPS. So you don't have to go and add special firewall rules or go get special dispensation from your IT department to have connections through port 80. So if you're using WebSockets, boom, you're up and running right off the bat from the corporate firewall to wherever you're trying to connect to.
Yep. Now, so you mentioned ports, and I just noticed while you're saying that. So these are the default ports on the software broker. So 8008 and 8443. The defaults, these were changed about maybe 5 years ago due to we can't have any ports below 1024 or something. There was some kind of rules in Linux. And so we made these our default ports, but in Solace Cloud, it is still 80 and 443. And on the Solace hardware appliance, it is still 80 and 443 for our web messaging ports. So when Ragnar's saying, port 80 and 443 are already open, you might say, hey, that's not what Aaron has on these slides. That's how they're exposed in cloud. And I think you can actually change that. If you have control of your Docker container, you can just come in here and remap these ports to port 80 or whatever. So
exactly.
Yep. So these were recently added to JCSMP, to Java, to JMS. Pretty much all of our APIs, hopefully as of today, they all support WebSockets. So, and I did a quick performance test. Ragnar, I don't know if I tell you this, but I basically took our JCSMP samples. I got rid of all the console printing and thread sleeps and everything, just to make it be published as fast as it can. And I got essentially the same speed going into the broker with using WebSocket or using standard TCP. So I was quite impressed with that. I was kind of expecting maybe a 5 to 10% hit, but using the Salt hardware appliance here in the lab in Singapore, it was like 1% difference. I couldn't even really tell the difference. So.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised because if you open up the RC and dial down into the WebSocket protocol, there's not much there.
Yeah,
there's not much there. Once you've established the connection, once you've done the handshake to drop down from HTTP and WebSockets, you're basically sending raw SMF over a port with an extra 2 or 4 bytes of header.
Okay, 2 or 4 bytes. Okay, so a very, very minimal amount of overhead. Okay, all right, awesome, cool. One last kind of biggish feature, it's not maybe that useful to everybody, but is our delayed redelivery. And I will mention that this is a controlled availability CA feature. You might see, CA spread around throughout the docs when you're looking for whether Solace supports a particular something or other. That means controlled availability. And all that means is we, Solace, the engineers, the support team want to vet your particular use of this particular feature to make sure that it's going to work in the way that you hope it would work. So Solace a couple of years ago added the ability to do really large transactions, right? So thousands of messages in one transaction. That is also controlled availability, because we want to make sure if you're publishing really huge messages, with thousands of them, that probably won't work so well if you're on a small broker, for example, right? So there's a couple things where we say we want to make sure that it's controlled. Anyway, Ragnar's phone's blown up. I can hear it there. So delayed delivery we've had for a number of years. This is basically a queue or an endpoint feature where basically you can delay the delivery of a message if I publish to it. The queue will hold on to it for 10 seconds or a minute or an hour before it sends it onto the consumer. For those old schoolers among us, and Ragnar, I heard that you didn't even hear about this. The way that we used to do this in the old days before this feature existed was we would publish to a queue that you couldn't bind to, and that queue had a TTL setting on it. And when the message expired to the DM queue is actually what the consumers would be listening to. So we kind of implemented a way to do delayed delivery in the broker with DM queues and TTL. And so, the older Solace folks out there will probably, especially in the field, will recognize that as a way to do delayed delivery. But we're talking about delayed redelivery. So this is specifically for JMS and JCSMP guaranteed consumers using transactions. So very scoped in feature, right? So it has to be transactions, it has to be JMS or JCSMP, and it's for guaranteed consumers only. And the idea is that when you do a rollback, the broker is going to not give you those messages again for some amount of time, right? That's essentially what it is. And I guess the reason would be just to not overload yourself. Is that that'd be the main kind of use case for this, right, Ragnar?
Exactly. I mean, if you're in a position where you have to roll back a transaction because you can't process it right now, because your resources are limited, the last thing you want is to immediately get pounded with all the same messages again.
That's right. So I've received all these messages. I'm like, I can't deal with this. Roll back, and immediately they start coming back at you right again, right? That is certainly not what people want, right? So, here's this is from the CLI. Obviously, I like to use the CLI still. Shout out to any console users out there. But this is in the queue configuration. Where you can go ahead and configure. There's even this cool exponential back off. So it's a neat feature. And if you are a heavy user of transactions for reading messages off the broker using Java, then check this out. I see Stephen Wong out there. Hello, how you doing? Let's go. You got a question here for payload compression. The max message size 30 megabytes. Blah, 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 blah. Yes, it is on the compressed side. Yeah. So post. What do you mean?
No. As I said, the max message size is actually enforced in the APIs. It will soon be enforced in all the APIs before being compressed and before sending.
Oh, that sucks. Really? Oh, okay. So you can't take like a 200 meg text file full of ABC 1, 2, 3 over and over and compress it down below. Okay. Ragnar's already answering questions here. Ragnar, you don't have to type things in because we're live. We can just answer. We just answer with our mouths. Yeah. Well, I didn't know that. All right. That's so you're still So you're still capped at that 30 megabyte limit. Sorry, Stephen. I didn't know. That's why I have the expert here. Thank you, Ragnar, for doing that. If you want to go bigger than 30 megs, you're going to have to slice and dice. And Solace has some connectors coming out that will help you with that. Where you can split really large files or split large messages, or obviously you'd have to kind of write some of that code yourself. So yeah, thanks for the question. Excellent. And a couple other ones that our product manager, Murat, shout out to Murat. Thanks for mentioning these. Wanted me to highlight. I can't speak much to them, but we support OAuth across all of our messaging APIs. This is becoming more and more commonplace, right? For customers demanding that we support OAuth. Is it OAuth or OAuth 2? Like, I don't know what the correct exact terminology is here. I've seen OAuth 2 mentioned quite a few places as well.
Yeah, I believe, I'm not exactly 100% on this, but I believe it is OAuth 2.0 support and OID Connect. It's more often OID Connect is actually what people would prefer to use, because it gives you the full authentication and authorization capabilities.
Right. And so this is using a token where you can connect to the broker, and the token lasts like an hour, at which point you have to refresh, and that's how you authenticate with the broker, rather than using certificates or basic username password, right? That's what OAuth essentially does in a nutshell. That's how I understand it. I still haven't actually played with it yet. So our C API and their derivatives now have support for Mac M series, Alpine Linux, and ARM. So if you're running on a small or not a small, I guess, but yeah, like on an ARM processor, we support that. We've upgraded our OpenSSL support to 3.0. Ragnar, you kind of tried to explain this to me and I didn't quite get it, but maybe just mention to the people out there who might be keen on this one feature or fix.
Well, the C APIs and the C API based APIs all use OpenSSL for the TLS engine. And OpenSSL 1.1.1 is end of life, or very soon end of life.
Right.
So we had to upgrade the C API to support the interfaces to OpenSSL 3.0 right out of the box. We still support 1.1 if that's what you've got. It detects and switches between them. We have removed, in the process of doing this, we used to bundle OpenSSL along with the C API in our tarball, and we no longer do that on platforms where OpenSSL already exists. Notably, all the Linuxes. It's like, just use what came from Red Hat or Debian, because that's where you're going to get the best support.
That's right. All right, so we're much more modern with regards to our OpenSSL integration. Increased thread affinity. So we support more than 64 threads now on the C API. You can specify that, I guess. That was a limit at some point.
That was a limit in the C API. Is again on Linux. Only Linux supports setting the thread affinity for your context thread or your and so we allow you now to set the internal thread affinity to some processor greater than 64 for when you've already used up your first 64 cores.
Right. You're running on some massive, for most normal people, we don't have this problem, but yeah, if you're running on a 128 core machine, you might need to use core number 121 or something. I don't know, right? So that could be a useful feature for the big box users out there.
And the compression questions keeps coming up. So yes, Nicholas, you are correct. If you compress it yourself, there's no 30 megabyte limit. Yes. If you
come it yourself, then there's no. Yeah. Obviously, because the API doesn't know anything about it. Right. Okay. So there's the workaround, Stephen. Yeah. So write the code yourself. It's probably about 10 or 20 lines of some code to just like take a byte array and
deflate it.
Yep. Deflate or zip or whatever fancy ones you want to use. And then you can and do it yourself. Yeah. So the compression feature, the automatic one in the APIs, do not help, but you can always compress it yourself and do it. So, and yeah, highly compressible text, JSON, XML especially is very compressible. So thanks for everybody answering questions while we're doing this. That's great. I like the collaboration. Last one on this slide, a special mention, JMS and JCSMP, both of them have the ability to kind of do these pre-send and post-receive hooks. And so this is like custom code, a custom callback that you can run, kind of a little bit of code that you can inject so that, especially useful in JMS if you're using, again, like a third-party app like BusinessWorks or some connector where you don't have access to the code, you're not writing the code yourself. You can have the message maybe encrypted or transformed or decorated, or you can enforce that, the publisher ID is always added, or you can do something just before it goes out the door. And again, I guess the post receive hook, I guess you would run the hook before the callback would run, right, Ragnar?
Right.
So that, yeah. Okay. So,
that's right. So that it allows people, especially in monolithic systems like with JMS, that's integrated into something else, to create a small application or class that you can just tell the API on the Java command line, use these hooks, call back into here, so that you can massage the data before sending and before it's received.
Massage the data. If you weren't using auto instrumentation open telemetry, you could do some telemetry stuff in there. You could do some logging. You could do whatever you want, right? I guess it's just like a little hook, custom hook that you could write and do some neat stuff. So yeah, that's just mother. Now, before we get into these, we got about 10, 15 minutes left. There was a question on the community that I just want to flash up here, and I don't necessarily know the answer to it. So I'm hoping maybe someone's out there who might actually know. So I'm just going to head over to solace.community. This is your one-stop shop for all things Solace. The banner is down at the bottom there. We're always promoting it. People like myself, Ragnar, Mark, the whole DA team, we hang out here along with a lot of other SEs. I guess we can watch ourselves, very meta right now. We can watch ourselves. But I did make a thread to say if people had a question. So I just want to make sure that this, we did notice the question. I don't have the answer for it. We will get the answer and I can post it here. But the question was from user Dreamoka. Based on Solace's AMQP 1.0 conformance documentation, the event broker does not support transactional messaging. May I know what reason his company is using, or their company is using AMQP rather than SMF? I really wish Solace can support transactional messaging using AMQP. Okay, so not necessarily a Solace API question, more a bit of around protocol conformance. Yep. But yeah, I don't have the answer to this. I asked internally, but only today, so I haven't heard back yet. If anybody is out there that happens to know, I don't know if any of our senior architects from R&D are listening, but neither Ragnar nor I know the answer to this, Dreamoka. So we will find out and get back to you on this one. Yep. So yeah, but thanks for posting in advance. This is the first time someone's actually posted on my office hours thread here. So keep it up. I want more questions in advance, and I will make sure that we get to them. So I just wish I had the answer instead. So
well, as with all things, this is the first time the question has come up to my mind. And as there's more questions, as more interest from the community, that sort of drives, our feature.
Well, something that I know definitely has come up with customers is sometimes which protocol to use. I went through here's all of our APIs. Here's 4 Java APIs. Which one do I choose? Oftentimes people are like, which protocol should I use? Should I use the Solace native one? Should I be using MQTT? Should I be using AMQP? Should I be using REST? I don't need to do very much fancy stuff. Should I just use your REST HTTP input-output API? And, there's different answers for different use cases. And it's kind of like, well, what do you want to do? AMQP is supposed to be the more kind of enterprise grade protocol versus MQTT, right? So I'm surprised that it hasn't come up before, like transactions with AMQP. I'm sure someone has asked for it before. And so, yeah, hopefully maybe it's on our roadmap already. I have no idea. We'll find out. So I'm just rambling, everybody. Sorry about that. let's do a couple best practices. This is something that I, through many years of experience as a professional services consultant with Solace, doing training. I was a trainer for quite a while, working with a lot of customers, looking at a lot of sample code. These are some things that people get wrong early on, and I just want to make a video. You might have seen these slides before. These are from an old training deck that I had, but I want to just walk through these, and I might go a little bit quick through them. But again, the replay for this will be on YouTube and on LinkedIn forever. So go and check that out. Ragnar, feel free to jump in here at any point and contradict me with my opinions, but these are my opinions. These are not Solace opinions. So in general, I find the two biggest pitfalls are not reading the documentation and not doing enough testing. And this is probably true for almost anything, right? So sometimes people just cut and paste a bunch of stuff, and it doesn't work, and they throw up their hands. They're like, rah. I don't know. This is just maybe me being an old cranky person, but yeah, we have user guides. We have lots of documentation. We just released our AI chatbot. You can go and chat with an AI who's read our documentation, internal documentation, the Solace community, ask it questions. We have tutorials. We have code labs. We have quick starts. We have the Solace community to come and ask us questions. Check stuff out. There's a lot of material out there to help you learn how to use Solace. YouTube videos. So there's lots of stuff available to you as a brand new developer learning how to use Solace. And two, not enough testing, happy path testing, right? The thing is, not every developer that uses Solace knows how to do proper infrastructure or Solace kind of testing. And so I'll just say that probably the things you want to make sure the most are network disconnect. Your API is connected and publishing and subscribing. You chop off the network. Easiest way that I do this is actually to shut down the client username, to disable the client username that app is using. And if you're using multiple apps, maybe give each one a different client username so you can shut them down one at a time. Make sure that it reconnects properly. Make sure that it doesn't process the same message twice. Make sure that it's handling its acknowledgements correctly, all that kind of stuff. Disconnection and queue full, right? You're publishing to a queue, your queue gets full. How do you deal with that? Ideally, your queues will never get full because you have proper monitoring and your queues are sized properly and your consumers are always online and available. But this is a problem, right? At some point, you'll probably run into a queue full. Test to make sure that your app works in that regard. Yeah, so that's it. So disconnect, router testing, and queue full. So here are my developer pitfalls according to Aaron. Sending and receiving only one message. This stemmed from some very early Hello World samples where we tried to show the very smallest amount of code to connect, send a message, and disconnect. And people took that and just wrote a big loop around the whole thing. And basically that was their, if they had to send 10 messages, they would connect, send one message, disconnect, connect, send one message, disconnect. That is a terrible way of building a messaging or a streaming eventing application, right? Ragnar, you might like this. I went and found, this is Google Images. This is the TCP connection handshake, all right? So, and not just TCP, which is, there's three little things at the top here, right? SYN, SYNAC, ACK. That's TCP connection. All of this is TLS. So if you're using TLS, look at all the crazy amount of stuff that has to happen when you're trying to connect to the broker, all this handshaking that's going on just to stand up the connection before you can start exchanging data, right? And I guess that's just
the TLS. That's just the lowest level. That's just the TLS now. We have a connection-oriented protocol, which is Solace SMF, and that's going to also, once you've got that done, it's going to send in a client control login and establish a connection to the broker, and then it's going to add all your subscriptions, or you're going to have to add all your subscriptions,
or it might call LDAP. It might have to do some LDAP stuff in the back end to verify who you are, right?
And then you want to bind to a queue. So the connection setup to get to the data transfer state is something you really only want to do once every million messages, not once per message.
That's right. That's right. So if you can hear my voice, like this is the one thing that number one, connect and just stay online forever, until your app is dead, until you're ready to hang up. Just do not connect and pub and sub one message at a time, because that is terrible from a network amount of effort that has to go through that, right? So check that out. I've never seen this. I never knew it was this much detail. And then again, there's SMF on top of that, right? So that's a lot. Connect, leave your app up, stay connected, publish and subscribe lots and lots of times on that single connection. All right, that's number one. Number two, not verifying your reconnection settings. Now, unfortunately, different Solace APIs, again, because of the new ones, the modern ones, we've improved on this. Some of them have poorly chosen defaults that we haven't wanted to change just due to legacy reasons. I'm going to speak about JCSMP because I know that one for sure. It's still set at 3 reconnect attempts at 3 seconds apart, which means that by default you only have 9 or 10 seconds to reconnect to the broker, which is usually fine for like a quick network flap. But if you're doing a hardware failover in a bad situation, could be 20 seconds. You could be in a DR situation where it might take minutes or possibly hours to reconnect. So number 2, verify your reconnection settings. Each API will have them written down somewhere. I'm sure you can just Google Solace reconnect settings and there's probably some documentation somewhere, but yeah, check these things out. These are important. You don't want your app to try to reconnect, 2 times and then just give up. And then the broker comes back up and all the messaging should start to resume, but your app is just disconnected and you don't bother reconnecting, right? So, yeah, I guess Ragnar, this is the automatic reconnection. This is the API handling the reconnection for you, right? Like obviously as a programmer, I could write, when I lose the connection, I could just restart my own connection rather than having the API do it, right? Which is, I guess, the other way of doing this. But
you can choose to do that, but you often, as a programmer, in an application, have a whole lot of your own state that you have to track.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't want to have to destroy that session and create a new session and go through all that and then get yourself back into the same state again.
That's right. Yeah.
With automatic reconnect, you for the most
part, keep those objects, right?
The session to the application will look like it's just temporarily flow controlled.
That's right. Yeah. Like for guaranteed messaging. So most of our kind of modern, newer use cases, it's a lot of guaranteed messaging. The API handles the reconnection. It handles the rebinding to your flows. It actually, as part of the reconnection handshake, there's like a verification of like the last ACK that was sent and the last message that was sent. And things just kind of carry on where they left off without the application, without you, the programmer, having to do anything. The API handles it for you. So, very convenient to have the API handle these reconnections for you, right? Yeah. And I guess if you want to get into real details, setting to -1 means try forever, but maybe there are some times when you don't want to retry forever. Maybe like every 20 minutes or something, you want to kind of eventually give it back to the application, let them retry or let them restart the connection process because maybe you don't want to just retry forever and have your application just sitting there forever. So anyway, try it out. Check your documentation, check your API docs. This one is a little bit more for direct messaging applications, so more not applicable to everybody, but if you are subscribing to a topic, you need to either reapply your subscription manually or tell the API to do it for you. So there's a session property called reapply subscriptions. Again, this is kind of older direct messaging only APIs or use cases. Not everyone is using direct messaging anymore. For queues, rebinding to your flows, that's handled automatically by the broker or by the API. So that's kind of nice. So you don't have to worry about this one thing.
Credit is due. It's handled by the broker.
The
subscriptions are persisted on the queue. So, right.
The subscriptions are the subscriptions are persisted on the queue, but in terms of the API reconnecting to the to your queue, to that reestablishing that flow, that's handled automatically. Yeah, so that's my analog.
Okay. Yeah, the API will automatically rebind to the flow for you. Taking all of that work out of your hands, and you don't have to worry about which messages have been delivered and which have been ACKed. It'll recover all the ACKs and make sure everything's back in the same state.
That's right. Very useful stuff. Okay, so logging. All of our APIs have logging built into them. Obviously, different languages have different mechanisms. It's Apache Commons logging in JCSMP, which you can pipe into Log4j, which is much more common. .NET has it, C has it. The .NET one is called like a delegate or something. And I don't know, they have different names, but all of our APIs support logging. And if you ever run into a bug, Solace support will obviously come and say, can you provide us with logs from your application, preferably debug level logs. And all I'm saying is make sure that you are using the Solace API logging and that you can configure this at runtime. You don't have to go and recompile your code to enable debug logging, because who's going to do that? I have a problem in production. I'm going to go and rerun my compiler and then redeploy it and then hope that I hit that bug again. No, that's not going to happen, right? So, yeah, in Java, you have a log4j properties file. You can just change that on the fly, or you can pass in a session property and to change your logging. I don't know what it's like in C or other languages, but hopefully it's not that hard. It's configuration files or something.
Well, the logging is typically set programmatically, but the usual solution in C applications is to send it a signal like sig user 1. You catch sig user 1 in your application and say, oh, time to turn my logging on.
That's cool.
Then you just make a C call to turn logging on.
Yep. I've written Solace applications that use Solace messaging as their control mechanism, right? So you can actually publish a Solace message on a control topic and it will activate something. So you could do something similar, but some people might say don't use Solace to do Solace things. I don't know. Anyway, 3 more to go. Number 5, the Solace APIs talk to your application through a number of different callbacks. This is how the API communicates the changes in state or what's happening within the API to signal to you, the application, what's going on, right? So your session is connected or disconnected or reconnecting, or the flow has closed or the flow is inactive. If you're receiving messages off a queue, or the flow is now, the flow is active. So if you're using an exclusive queue and you bind to it, if you get an active flow indicator, that means that you are the active consumer, not the standby one. There's a bunch of different callbacks, a bunch of different signaling. And again, each API is a little bit different just because of the language differences. But the main thing is don't just kind of do a no-op in that callback, right? At least log it or do a print line. Just do something so that, if you receive a callback on your flow or on your session or on your consumer, you've written it down somewhere. So you've logged it or something, right? So, and oftentimes if you're building a GUI application, this is like, turn the light green or turn it red. I mean, these are useful signals to the application to know what's going on, right? So useful stuff.
Yeah, I'd almost put that ahead of logging. You want to get this information programmatically, right? You want to know immediately in your program that your message has been rejected. You don't want to be scanning the logs later and saying, oh, well, where's the log that tells me my message was rejected? That's true.
All right. So all right. So these are not in any particular order. These, right? So this is quite important. And oftentimes maybe you are expected to implement in Java an interface that you don't quite know exactly what this is used for, right? I mean, I think there's one callback that I'm like, when have I ever used this? And I put in some code, and it was only during DR testing if a producer flow didn't exist or something really weird corner case that this one callback would happen on. So I'm like, this is 99.9% of the time never going to happen, but it's still good to log it in case you ever do see it. So. Yeah. All right. Last 2. This is for guaranteed publishers, right? So as I'm publishing into the broker, unless I'm using a blocking publish where the send call will error out, will throw an exception if the publish is unsuccessful. Most of our APIs, if you want to do high performance publishing, it is a streaming publish, which means it's asynchronous in terms of the ACKs, the acknowledgements or the negative acknowledgements coming back from the broker. And these are going to be done on a callback. So I'm publishing, make sure that you're listening to those ACKs and NACKs, right? So if I'm publishing and the broker sends me a NACK because the queue is full or something went wrong, to your point, you want to know about it, right? You want to hear that something broke, and don't just throw that kind of that signal away. Don't just have a no-op or some comment in there saying, hopefully not that this never gets called, because that's not good, right? So I also have a video on publisher producer acts and knacks. So go on YouTube, we talk about kind of different behaviors maybe you want to do. But yeah, the main thing is make sure that you are listening to those callbacks from the broker. And the last one, I don't know, Ragnar, do you have something to say on that, this slide?
No,
got
good.
it. All right. And the last one is consumers not handling duplicate messages. And again, this goes back to if you want to do anything with any amount of performance, you are going to be streaming or doing asynchronous delivery or consuming from the broker, right? If you do one message at a time, especially if you're going over the WAN, you're going to have very poor performance, less good performance, I guess. But you'll always be like perfectly, like only one message outstanding at a time. If you are streaming messages from the broker to you and you crash, your application crashes at seg faults or whatever, all of the messages that the broker sent, but you have not acknowledged yet, the broker is going to resend to somebody else. It's going to resend to the next available consumer. And we'll try to help. The broker will set a flag on those messages to say, hey, this is a redelivered message. But it's up to you, the consumer, to make sure that you're not processing a message a second time. I guess that's the whole thing here, right, Ragnar? Is it is possible due to we can't be 100% sure that this message has not been processed again, especially during DR events. Well, DR is just a if things are DR, that's you got probably bigger problems than maybe a dupe.
An occasional dupe.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, check the message resend flag. If you're using guaranteed messaging in Solace with a Solace API on each message, check to see if the message has been redelivered. It's called I think it's just is redelivered or something like that. If your app is not tolerant for dupes, and verify with whatever golden source you're using hasn't already processed it, right? So if you're passing this message into, this consumer is then talking to a payments gateway, make sure you don't buy the same thing twice. Or maybe the payments gateway is already coded to dedupe, right? I'm passing in the same message with the same order ID and the same transaction number. The payment gateway might be like, oh, I've already seen this, I'm going to throw it away. In which case you don't have to worry about dupes, right? In that case. So I guess it's up to, it's very use case.
It's very meta.
To worry about dupes or not.
It's very meta. It's outside of the like the broker. It's all
anything else there, Ragnar?
Solace system will guarantee at least once delivery.
Oh, I can't hear you.
Oh, did I go quiet?
Am I on mute?
Hello. Lost
Sorry,
me?
I can't hear you. I don't know if anybody else. This happened to me last time. My headphones died, but this time I'm wired in. So
it's me.
Someone out there tell me if people can hear Ragnar if he's quiet. I'm just gonna finish up here. This is the last slide. This is the some links if you want to check these out. Just Google them. Our topic best practices, DMR best practices are good. Protocol metadata encoding. There's a blog here that I was going to talk about. Again, it's going back to streaming, how the acknowledgements from the broker are sent and kind of how window sizes affect that. Some reading material to check out there if you want. But I hope I think that's the end. Yeah, that's the end there. So Ragnar, I can't hear you. I don't know what's going on.
It's apparently on your end, though.
So it is me.
It is you.
What is going on?
Anyway,
well, give me 2 seconds. Why is this happening? Hello.
I'm still here.
Ragnar, can you hear me now?
I've always been able to hear you.
Switch my speaker. Well, I don't know, everybody. Well, I'll tell you what, Ragnar, if you can hear me, we're just going to say goodbye separately because I can't hear you. But unfortunately, we're at the end of the broadcast anyway, so I can sort out my headphones problems in a minute. I can still see you though. So why don't you say a few last words before we go, and then I'll wrap us up here.
Okay. Thank you, Aaron, for having me. This was a lot of fun. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I hope that you got a little bit of nuggets of information out of that. And like I say, call us in community or through your favorite support person. We're always here to answer your questions.
All right. I think you stopped. Yep. Okay. All right. Well, okay. Sorry about that. Sorry about that, everybody. I even got my, I'm wired in here. I'm on a wire. It's not, my headphones have died. I don't know what's going on. I'll check it out. Thank you all for joining. Thank you for your questions. I hope you found this useful. Tune in next month. I'm going to be joined by two guys from our product management team. We're going to be talking about micro integrations, all of the new stuff that we're building for connecting your databases, your different cloud native services, all sorts of different things, legacy messaging, other messaging services using Solace. Micro integrations, just like you have microservices, we are building these micro integrations, connectors to move data between anything that you want and Solace. So be sure to check that out. Ragnar, thanks for joining, even though I can't hear you. I'll talk to you on Teams or Slack or something in a minute. Yeah, thanks everybody. Thank you, Mark, for being backstage. And yeah, see you next time. All right. Bye-bye.